Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's chapter reading of my book, Losing Sight of the Shore, How to Live on a Boat Without Killing Your Family. I'm Rosa Román, and I just have been reading one chapter a week of my book, just for fun, just for practice, and also just to kind of share it with the world, because I wrote it, and it reminds me, it brings back some happy memories of our sailing adventures. Some not so happy, but mostly happy. If you don't know, my family and I lived on a 45-foot sailing catamaran called the Dawn Treader. We lived on that boat twice, two different times, sailed the entire east coast of the United States and the Bahamas in that boat. And we also lived back in 2009 on another boat called Hakuna Matata when my girls were 2 and 4. Anyway, I am reading the chapters, and I'm also using these chapters, the audio and the text, in my new Substack channel publication. So if you are interested in that, you can find that in the show notes, wherever you're watching this. But basically, Substack is the place where I put my writing, my musings, and the publication is called Untethered Adventurers. So I guess this is relevant, and I'm going to share chapters there as well. But without further ado, this week's chapter is chapter 6. Let's see if I can turn it around. Chapter 6, Chores Afloat. And here we go. This is Losing Sight of the Shore, Chapter 6, Chores Afloat. Bed making on a boat is a full contact sport. The space is small, and boat beds always seem to come in odd shapes and sizes that don't match the standard sheet set you bought at Target. The beds, or more properly called berths, also take up most or all of the room, or cabin, so there's no way to walk around the bed to tuck in the corners and straighten the comforters. Worst of all, the headspace over the bed is always less than you remember, so that when you are crawling around on top of the clean sheets, trying to simultaneously lift the mattress, tuck the corners under, and smooth things down, with your own body weight, making this impossible as you move from the head to the foot of the bed, you inevitably forget not to sit up too quickly, and you hit your head and curse and see stars. Then, after you get the bed looking just perfect, and you're looking forward to enjoying a dry, clean, snuggly night's sleep, one of your kids decides to drop down through the upper hatch above your bed after a good swim or a roll on the beach, as a shortcut to your bathroom because they think your shower is so much nicer than theirs, and you end up with sand and salt water everywhere. Or perhaps you get through making all the beds and you've made it through the witching hours when you would rather jump overboard with tiger sharks than yell, "You better be in your beds, I said it's time to go to sleep," one more time. And you have checked the lines and retied the loose ones and used the spotlight to recheck the anchor stays, and the swing pattern between you and the 3 boats surrounding you in the anchorage. And you have already washed all the dishes and made sure every crumb that might attract cockroaches or ants is cleaned up. And you have twisty-tied all the cereal and snack bags to keep the moisture and mold out. And you have already run the floor vacuum all over the salon and cabin floors to pick up as much sand and dog hair as you could. And you then made sure the hatches were all closed properly and the cabin door was closed and locked. And then, exhausted beyond measure to the point that your bones ache, you finally collapsed into that nice, clean, freshly made bed and have just fallen asleep into the deep kind of sleep that you can only get on a boat as it sways gently back and forth on the waves, when you are awoken suddenly, in what seems like 10 minutes later, by a screaming, crying kid announcing that they just threw up all over that bed that you spent an hour or so making, and by the way, they puked on their sibling too, just for good measure. Like I said, full contact sport. But that is only part boat life and part normal life with kids. Living on a boat just makes the hard parts of raising kids a little harder. The same job that might take you half an hour on land can take you 3 times as long on a boat. And it isn't just bed making. In fact, bed making is easy compared with liveaboard laundry when you factor in dinghy rides, rainstorms, and humid tropical conditions. In our past life in New Mexico, I had come to accept that doing laundry was a never-ending hamster wheel. This wasn't something that I complained about too much because I liked doing laundry. It gave me a chance to listen to my favorite podcasts and hide out from the kids for a little while. Magically, whenever I said, "Anyone want to help me with the laundry?" they would scatter like rats off a sinking ship. Same with the dishes or pretty much any job that I asked them to do, come to think of it. Back then, the kids were still little, and I didn't really want their help anyway for fear of ending up with pink whites because of an accidental red shirt in the load. Well, I marveled at the way 3 small children could create a new mile-high pile of laundry every single day. I figured that was the price of living in the mountains with the snow and mud and muck. It just seemed like part and parcel of the landlocked life. Here in our Texas home, even without any mountains to speak of, I expect more of the same. But when you move onto a boat, you think it will be different. When the standard daily attire is little more than a tiny 2-piece bathing suit, one imagines there would be very little laundry to do, and that you will hardly spend any time at all on it when you are on the water. As it turns out, there is at least as much laundry to handle on a boat as there is on shore, and a lot more you have to think about during the process. How is it possible that there is more laundry on a boat? Well, it all comes down to smells. For me, pretty much everything comes down to smells. The problem with laundry on a boat is that, unlike laundry on land, you can't just toss it in the hamper and forget it. On boats, forgotten things get very smelly very quickly, and smelly quickly turns to moldy. Towels and bathing suits are among the worst offenders. In the moment, it may seem like an innocent dip in the ocean, but if you make the fatal mistake of hanging that suit in your bathroom afterwards, you will soon, let me say that again, but if you make the fatal mistake of hanging that suit in your bathroom afterwards, you will soon wonder if a crab crawled inside your swimsuit and died. Actually, that wouldn't be too far from the truth of what happens. Seawater is full of tiny microorganisms that do die and rot. If you have ever found dead kelp on the beach with flies swarming around it, you know the exact smell I'm talking about. Once an article of clothing acquires this smell, it is almost impossible to get rid of it. The only real solution we found is to bleach it, but we don't like to do that because bleach is terrible for coral reefs. The less effective solution we usually employed was to rinse the offending clothing with fresh water and hang it outside to let the sun bake the stench out. But sunbaking is only possible if the conditions are right. If either the wind or the local boat laundry bans are too strong, hanging anything outside is not an option when you live on a boat. By this, I mean that many marinas and harbor-facing neighborhoods forbid boats to hang laundry on deck because it is considered an eyesore. Generally, those marinas provide a laundry room for your convenience, but the few functioning dryers will likely be super expensive and forever occupied by mega yacht crews rotating through loads of linens and who knows what else. Still, you will be grateful for those relatively convenient washers and dryers, even if it means doing your laundry at midnight, because you know this is about as good as it gets when it comes to laundry and the liveaboard life. My favorite summary of what laundry is really like when you live on a boat came from a fellow liveaboard mom, Michelle Peacock, on her blog, Around in Circles. In it, she writes her hilarious tale of having to lug 4 loads of laundry in a dinghy in the rain with 2 kids, only to discover after washing a load that the dryer was broken, and then having to haul all the wet clothes back into the dinghy and motor to another laundromat, also in the rain. Plus, because they are apparently gluttons for punishment, they also attempted a grocery store run at the same time. Talk about a perfect storm. Michelle is a great writer, and I highly recommend you go check out her post right now. But for now, here's a little excerpt as they headed to the laundromat in the dinghy. Quote, "On the way there, we passed under a bridge that has a pretty impressive current. As we approached the bridge, a boat, went flying by, sending a 2-foot wake in our direction. Matt tried to avoid the huge swells, but with the combination of current and wake, we were thrown into the bridge supports. Scared the living hell out of me. Everyone remained on board. Thank you, baby Jesus. And Matt did an amazing job keeping control of the dinghy. I probably peed my pants, but it was raining, so who knows? We made it to the dock in town just as the major downpour started. Yay. Like I said, a great writer. At some point during that maddening day, her exasperated husband texted her, "We should have named our blog A Rather Inconvenient Lifestyle." So true. Laundry, groceries, bed making, sewage, and water management, communication with the outside world, and so many other things are harder when living on a boat. It can be a really, really inconvenient lifestyle. For all my complaining, the reality is that we had it better than most on the Dawn Treader. We actually had a tiny washer-dryer combo unit on board that we could use to save the day in a scenario like the one that Michelle's family faced that day. We would have just washed the clothes at the laundromat and then brought them back on board to dry. But it would have been a very slow drying process. The onboard unit can only fit about 1/8 of what a normal dryer on land would fit. But having a way to dry things when the world around you is so wet came in handy on more than one occasion. In a pinch, we could wash those puked-on sheets without having to leave the boat in the middle of the night to do so. Of course, like pretty much every system you find on a boat, running a washer-dryer unit on board isn't a carefree proposition. In our land-based homes, we simply opened the washer door, stuck the laundry and soap in, hit start, and then followed a similar plan for the dryer. Generally, we didn't have to think about how much water or power we were using or whether the dryer was properly vented. Not so on a boat. In order to run the washer-dryer while at anchor on the Dawn Treader, you also had to run the generator. Since the water maker also ran off the same breaker as the washer-dryer, you couldn't run both at the same time. This often posed a problem because doing laundry uses a lot of water. That is just part of the reason that most cruisers we met didn't have a washer-dryer on board, and the ones that did rarely used them. Another reason is that boat dryers take up precious space and are notorious for not really drying anything anyway. By necessity, a boat is a closed system because nobody wants random holes in their hull, which begged the question, where do you vent the dryer to? This was one of those times it was handy to have a mechanical engineer on board. Nathan redesigned the Dawn Treader's washer-dryer system to solve the issue of trapped moisture by drilling some holes, a very scary prospect on a boat if you ask me, and venting it into the forward hold. This meant that our dryer actually worked quite well, albeit slowly. It also meant you would need to go outside, often in the rain when things most needed drying, to prop open the hold after the washer cycle was finished, while simultaneously trying not to let the rain get into said hold since it also housed the water maker. I usually remembered this step halfway through the process in the middle of the night after I had just fallen asleep. Still, despite the inconvenience, I was grateful for my engineer, doctor, inventor husband's dryer venting setup, which prevented all that moist, hot air from pumping right back into the cabin again. We were especially grateful for this during the hot, humid summer months. Another example of how creative problem solving can make this inconvenient lifestyle a little more convenient. So that was chapter 6 of Losing Sight of the Shore by me, Rosa Román. And I see a few of you are here live, and I have a comment from the very engineer, inventor man I just mentioned. Nathan is watching, so thank you. Yay, it worked. That's it. I'm doing these once a week on Tuesdays at noon Mountain Time. We are in New Mexico, despite that chapter was talking about Texas. After we moved off the Dawn Treader the first time, we moved to Austin and lived there for a year before we ended up traveling full time. And then when COVID hit, we bought the same boat back and moved back onto that boat. So we have, maybe there'll be another chapter of this book or another edition in the future. But for now, that is chapter 6 of Losing Sight of the Shore. And thank you so much for joining me on this live stream or on the replay. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you again next week. Bye, everybody. I don't know how to get out of here. I do, but I forgot.